Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman, Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Monday, March 13th, 2017. Apparently, it is a little bit after 9 o'clock. We're a little bit late in getting things started today. I don't know. I had trouble, getting everything moving this morning, putting the headphones on. My headphones are falling apart still, and I keep cobbling them back together. And then I'm fumbling with these things to make sure that they're on right. And, we missed our original cue, but we're back on. It's 9 o'clock, allegedly. It is daylight savings time. It's 8 o'clock for those of you who keep the old gods. And if you have not yet set your clocks ahead, well then, surprise, you're probably missing the first half of the show. Anyway, I've not really figured out. It seems like I think they are, in fact, moving daylight savings time earlier in the year, or they did recently. We may have discussed this at some point in the past. I don't know whether there's any official. I don't know where do you even go? Who tells me when these things are? I don't know. It's on my calendar, so they make these decisions a long time ago, and then they're moving back the return to standard time. It's at this point, are we just doing 6 months of each, or is there any savings to be had? And of course, the first Monday is horrible. You're supposed to have Sunday to get used to this thing, but Sunday doesn't really count. And then you realize on Monday, daylight savings. I'm saving so much daylight that I'm back up in the dark again. Where's all the daylight I saved yesterday? Couldn't I have that this morning? In the meantime, our spring-like weather is breaking, and we're in for a snowstorm. Who knows what Greg will get up in Connecticut tomorrow, Tuesday. He's normally off anyway. He'll probably be stuck at home. And we should be able to broadcast. I don't think we're going to have blizzard conditions here, in that we won't have the wind that's going on further up the coast. The eastern elitists are going to get it. And but the kids are excited. There'll be a day off from school from snow. I think we had a day canceled once when it kind of frosted a little bit, and they didn't think we were going to get any snow days, and we build so many of them into the schedule. But we're supposed to maybe get a foot of snow here tomorrow. So, we'll be hanging on and seeing how that goes. I don't know what happened this morning. Everything was going fine, and then all of a sudden I sat down to eat some breakfast, and I found out Kellyanne McCann isn't Inspector Gadget or something. I got no idea what that's supposed to mean. I saw the story, I think, in which it came up, but was she also on TV? Or was it written up after a TV appearance? I don't know. We'll see whether maybe Greg has a handle on the chronology of how she came to deny that she was Inspector Gadget. And I have seen also this morning some good Twitter evidence to the contrary, but I guess that's what it revolved around, which was that she was back on the air or talking to reporters defending Trump's some crazy, some not so crazy, who knows, wiretapping claims. And I don't know how it got to this, but apparently there are microwaves that turn into cameras, and we all know this. And what's your evidence? And she says, I'm not in the job of providing evidence. We'll straighten it all out. I don't know what job she's supposed to be in. No one can figure this out. I'm sure there was surveillance. I'm a fan of believing that there was surveillance of that den of thieves and spies known as Trump Tower. There better have been surveillance over there. And the fact that Donald Trump kept his campaign headquarters there, well, just coincidental as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, another update I need to give you. I have no morning tweet for you from Bill in Portland, Maine. And I was alerted to this toward the end of the week, but I wasn't clear on whether or not this was something I ought to tell anybody in public. But I did get notice last week from a fan of the show, Christina Nowacki, who let us know that Bill was not well. He was in the hospital, and he was having some emergency surgery at the end of last week, and still recovering this week. Word is that he's doing better, but we're awaiting some test results and who knows what, and I'm sure that he'll make everything that he's willing to make public himself and through his many, many friends who are supporting him there in Portland and all around the country. We wish you well, Bill. We miss you, and I know everybody else does too. Misses Cheers and Jeers in the morning and cheers and jeers aside, morning tweet aside, everybody just misses Bill. So best of luck to you. Hope you're back on your feet as soon as possible. And all the best. That's all we can do at this point is wish for the best and let them know that we think so. Greg Dworkin joins us from Connecticut. You're still doing well, yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, best wishes to Bill. We miss Bill because of Bill, not because of other stuff he does. But
right.
That too. We'll
take them both.
We'll take a total package.
Yes. All right. Well, we can keep up to date on those things, and I don't have any beans to spill on that front anyway. And as you know, it's not nice to do that anyhow. Let him make his own announcements through his own channels. But we know you could use our best wishes, and we're happy to give them.
Absolutely true, all of it.
And you too, if you have a cold.
Well, I really shouldn't be inhaling my coffee first thing in the morning. I think that's really the main thing.
You should wait until 10 to inhale coffee. I always recommend it that way. But, I'm not in the business of having evidence or knowing medicine or anything.
Well, speaking of evidence, of course I don't have any evidence, said Kellyanne Conway. Said she has no proof after floating theory that Obama administration spied on Trump Tower through TVs and microwaves. And insists she is not Inspector Gadget.
Inspector Gadget did not do that. That wasn't what Inspector Gadget was about. He didn't inspect gadgets either.
No, he just had gadgets. Go Gadget.
Yeah, you can spy through things. I'm sure...
He was
possible,
a cop,
but...
He chased bad guys.
Right. He was like a Fourth Amendment nightmare, that guy, and we had a cartoon out of him. That's crazy. Well, I guess if he can make Hogan's Heroes, he can make anything.
But that's not the same thing as being a bad guy.
That's true. He was a well-intentioned Fourth Amendment nightmare.
Anyway, some fairly heavy-duty stuff going down in the Pundit Roundup today and what's going on. A couple of basic themes. One of them, of course, is going to be healthcare.
All right.
The other one is the generic what's going on with Trump in this country.
Yeah, what is?
Well, it turns out, okay, let's start with that. There's this fascinating piece here in the Washington Post entitled, "In Georgia, Reaction to the KKK Banner is a Sign of the Times." I don't know if you read about this one.
I saw people tweet about it, and KKK banner. What?
Right? And there's this sign up. It says, "Historic Ku Klux Klan Meeting Hall." And it was actually screwed with like 21 screws onto a building. 21? Is that secret Hitler code or anything? It's not like 88 or anything like that.
Okay. Hitler says if you're going to put a sign up, 21 screws is the way to go.
But you got to ask those questions, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, everybody starts getting upset because there's this banner hanging in the middle of the square.
Okay.
All of a sudden, it just appears. Just past the old brick courthouse, the story says, across the street from the candy store and the antique shop, a large rectangular banner was screwed tight into the cracked wood siding of a long vacant building on East Main Street, and it says Historic Ku Klux Klan Meeting Hall, which of course it never was.
Oh. Well, then that's really problematic.
And it has a picture of a cartoon-type KKK person holding up like a Nazi salute.
That's some cartoon. What?
Are you at the...
I'm in the abbreviated Pundit Roundup, but did you put it there or did you Skype me?
I put it there in the Skype list for you.
Okay.
So,
all right.
I'll just put it right there on the bottom so it's easier for you to find.
Okay. There we are. Oh, Washington Post has it. Okay, right.
Yeah, in Georgia, reaction to KKK.
That is cartoony.
Right, and then right at the top, you could see the cartoony
Short
KKK
arms.
guy with his hand up in the air.
Yeah, there he is. Hi. He's waving.
Yeah. Hello to everybody. Very friendly guy. And, a lot of stuff, they point out, has been happening all over the country. Spray painting swastikas on homes of Jewish people. In Virginia, where you live, flyers were distributed in several neighborhoods with the words, "Make America White Again and Greatness Will Follow." I don't know if you got one of those.
I did. I was away for the weekend.
Colorado, 2 typewritten notes that read, "We're going to blow up all you refugees who left at a community center serving Muslim immigrants." And, everything seems to have been, well, we have this small town and we all know each other and we're not the rest of the world. And then all of a sudden it arrives there with that big sign. And it turns out, they have meetings about it and they're upset about it. The mayor is upset about it. The churches are upset about it. And the mayor and the sheriff are trying to figure out what to do in this small town. I understand small towns. I live in one. Everybody talks to each other. You know who everybody is. And then all of a sudden, this is like, what is going on? And then people hear about it, and it goes online, and it goes on social media, and it becomes all over the country. And again, being from Newtown, I understand when something like that happens, and all of a sudden everybody else seems to have an idea about your town that may or may not have anything to do with what it's really like when you live there.
Mm.
And then maybe it was the Klan, maybe it was something else. And then it turns out that it was an old white woman named Roberta Green Garrett, who's the owner of the building.
Oh, well, that makes some sense.
Who lives in a brick mansion with 4 white columns on a hill overlooking the town.
I see. Not in a shoe.
Yeah, offering no explanation and declining to speak with reporters, she told town officials that she had allowed the banner to go up and might try to put it up again.
Hmm.
She'd been seeking permission to build a hotel on the square, and people said maybe it was a ploy to embarrass the town into approving her plans.
Oh.
That's what some people said. Other people said it doesn't matter. It was there. Somebody put it up there. And what's going on here? What's wrong with our town? Why would we accept this? And then there's all these rumors about going on, who really did it and who's really going, to do this. And then pickup trucks arrive, and one has a Confederate battle flag and America Great Again flags. And a protester starts yelling at one of them. And the guy yells at the protester, "Don't make assumptions." And then it gets worse, and then they start arguing, and then they have a town meeting about it. It's just a fascinating look. And let me read about one thing that people said, which I thought was fascinating. The next morning, all of this was the topic of North Georgia Talk Radio, and the host was taking callers. And a woman named Sharon was on the line, and she says, "It's not just fake news, it's a fake agenda." She explains that the banner might have been part of an elaborate plot not only to create chaos in Dahlonega, but also to undermine the presidency of Donald Trump and ultimately the nation. She knows all of this because she's gone online, and she discovered a website for a group with locations around the country, including there, that was made up of former congressional staffers working for the previous administration.
Yes.
They're supporting impeachment. They support open borders. They're supporting Obamacare. She's referring, of course, to the Indivisible group. They are promoting disruptions at town halls. I call it bullying, she says. And they have a potential for violence. And I hope everybody is aware that this type of activity, I call it subversion with a fake narrative, is taking root in the area. Meanwhile, back in reality. But I just think that's fascinating in regard to how, a certain segment of the population look at the resistance movement.
Right. The Inspector Gadget wing.
Trying to violently take back our president, they say.
Right. I bought a T-shirt from those guys, Vote from the Rooftops, and it's got like a crosshairs on it. Mm-hmm. I'm very upset. I have to bring it back and try and get my money back. I was told it was a patriotic T-shirt, and once I got it, it was subversive, so I need to return it.
There you go. But over at Town Hall, an assistant to the old white lady who put up the banner, filing paperwork. Well, it doesn't say that. It says Green Garrett, her name, but, that's who she was filing paperwork for a new sign permit. Size of sign, 4 by 6 feet. Material of sign, wood painted. Color of sign, gold with black lettering. House sign will be attached to wall. Screwed. Well, there's an application to make the sign permanent.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's a historic Ku Klux Klan meeting hall, and that's how the 7th day of this whole adventure ended. And then 2 days after that, the application was withdrawn, and the lady issued her first statement since unleashing all of this 8 days before, saying that she had been trying to get a hotel built only to meet opposition at every turn. "I have no other motivation other than to bring businesses and tax revenue to the city," her statement said. "I want to move forward and do something positive for the city of Dahlonega." She said nothing about the KKK banner, and when she was reached by phone, she said no comment and hung up. So you have all of that. People are still debating it back and forth. And, she sparked something. So people protested. They got together. And one of the people who was in the town said all of this was what worried Valerie Fambro, sitting outside a coffee shop on the pleasant afternoon. She felt good about all the people, including Trump supporters, who had come out to proclaim a message of love. She felt unsettled that some people thought she was part of an alt-left agenda.
Oh.
It all felt like the beginning of something, not the end. I'm just scared these days, even though the banner was no longer anywhere in sight. And so, what it tells us is, I think, a lot of different things. One is that people feel comfortable putting up signs like that when they might not have.
Yes.
And the other is that if you complain or protest the sign, all of a sudden you're part of the alt-left, and apparently you're part of a conspiracy to take down Donald Trump.
Yes.
Basically gave a permission structure for this to happen. And
so.
It's amazing how people react to it. Not that, gee, this is bad, but that if you're against it, you must be against Trump, therefore I'm against you.
So if I got it correct, if you are against the KKK, you're against Trump.
Something like that.
All right.
Right? And so, this is the basket of deplorables.
Yeah.
There's other Trump voters who aren't in the basket of deplorables, but that small group of people, and in this particular town, it wasn't the majority. The majority of people, and I don't know how the town voted. I suppose I could look it up. But on the whole, people were very upset about this, and only a handful were for it. But the fact that people now understand and know that within their midst there are people that are for it is what's so upsetting.
Yes. So
not because the majority.
If you want a hotel, KKK sign.
All publicity is good publicity,
Right.
except it's really not true.
They are the basket of deplorables is there, and they're lining the basket with tinfoil and wearing it on their heads. This is where we are.
Now, here's another story,
wow.
which is basically whole big picture stuff. It's by Brad Fay, F-A-Y, contributor,
Okay.
who is the chief commercial officer for Engagement Labs, and this story appears in the Huffington Post. And I
Gotta
think
have
it's
a lab
valid.
for
Again,
engagement.
I'll add it at the bottom because it's easier for you to find that.
Okay,
way.
sure.
Comey letter swung election for Trump, consumer survey suggests.
Huh.
Emotion and peer influence play much bigger roles in influencing behavior than previously understood. And this guy is a market industry guru. That's what he does for a living.
That's
Maybe.
why he has a lab. Because he's a guru.
That's what he says.
guru
And
with
now
labs.
his presidency have invited fundamental questions about the trustworthiness of the news media, science and measurement, and indeed the very idea of objective truth, he says. When President Trump levels his charge of fake news at mainstream news organizations, Exhibit A is Trump's victory in the election, despite widely reported polling and statistical models that suggested he would lose. So, a market research colleague of his, Josh Chasen of ComScore, says, the fact that the polls all said he'd lose but then he won served to prove that Trump and those around him that mainstream media is fake news, while nonsense like Fox or Breitbart or InfoWars are legit. And let's face it, our collective worlds were rocked by this twist, and even those of us steeped in logic and learning have been doubting the veracity of things we have taken to be true for our whole lives.
No, well, you're still right.
So it does, make you question things. But what this fellow, Brad Fay, writes, the false predictions of a comfortable Clinton victory were based on state national polling throughout the campaign that showed her with a fairly persistent lead, it's documented by 538 among others. Even in the final week of the campaign, Clinton's lead remained between 3 and 5 points, finishing at 4 points on Election Day. Of course, she won the national popular vote by 2, even as she lost the Electoral College due to narrow defeats in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. My purpose is not to suggest there was an alternate way to confidently predict the election, but I do believe it was possible to show the possibility of a Trump victory was rising more rapidly in the final week than opinion polls and related prediction models showed. And the way he does this is, he says his firm has been tracking face-to-face consumer conversations about brands for more than a decade.
Yeah, huh?
What they do is they conduct a daily online survey among consumers to ask them about the product categories and brands they've been talking about in the last 24 hours. And so they're using a survey to measure behavior rather than opinion. Do you like the brand? Do you not like the brand? And if you consider Clinton and Trump to be brands, their survey is supposed to pick stuff up.
Did they do that survey?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's what they find. The average daily net sentiment from Labor Day through Election Day, Clinton was at a -30 and Trump was at a -47.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
For the most part. But while both candidates were always firmly in negative territory, Clinton enjoyed a persistent lead And both candidates experienced significant drops in the immediate aftermath of the infamous audio recording of Billy Bush and Donald Trump, although Clinton still had the advantage. And then, decisively,
okay. That
she drops a little, he drops
one.
a lot.
Yeah, but
She
still.
dropped a lot, too. And it's like, why did she drop?
Yes.
That's a great question, because it's not really clear. I guess I'm just totally speculating that the reaction to the tape sparked a lot of pushback on the misogyny dial.
Maybe, yeah, I guess. Or she planted this tape, or
stuff like that. You know,
the microwave did it.
Right? So approximately the same time, the Billy Bush tape comes out on October 7th, and she's a minus 11, and a week later she's a minus 37. He goes from minus 46 to minus 55, which is the lowest point he was in the entire time. And that's a head-scratcher and interesting, and maybe at some point we'll write Mr. Fay and say, what was up with that? Okay.
What is he, Inspector Gadget?
But what he writes, most decisively, after FBI Director James Comey released his October 28th letter, and remember how late that was, October 28th, Clinton drops 17 points. And for the first time, the entire election goes below Trump. And Trump has an 11-point rise while she's dropping. In other words, right before that, she was minus 29, he's minus 53. Seems like on October 23rd, she's sailing to win the election. And a week later, he's 42 and he's minus 42 and she's minus 46.
Okay.
Stays below him until Election Day.
All right.
So at a time when opinion polling showed maybe a 2-point decline in the margin for Clinton, this conversation suggests a 28-point change in the word of mouth standings. Oh. And the change in word of mouth favorability was stunning and much greater than traditional opinion polling revealed. So based on this finding, it's their conclusion, he says, that the Comey letter 11 days before the election was the precipitating event behind Clinton's loss, despite the letter being retracted a week later. In such a close election, there may have been dozens of factors whose absence would have reversed the outcome, such as the influence campaign of the Russian government. But the sudden change in the political conversation after the Comey letter suggests it was the single most indispensable factor in the surprise election result. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
And he says our conversation also raised a different but fundamental question about the predictive power of public opinion data in predicting behavior, at least given the unique features of a campaign that featured two unpopular candidates, non-traditional campaigning in a late October surprise. So he suggests behavior predicts behavior better than attitudes and opinions. He suggests the invisible offline conversation matters. He was able to pick it up and the other polls were not. He says humans are a herding species and they tend to go in the same direction. And we saw that if you actually look at, if you made up your opinion in the last week, who did you vote for? And Trump was, first of all, there's a lot of people, twice as many as normal, who did that according to exit polls. And Trump won those voters. So, there's a lot that went on here that supports this theory. I just think it's fascinating. And, of course, one has to be careful about confirmation bias. I always thought it was Comey, and this article says it is, therefore it's right. But I just think it's well put together and well done and a very intriguing theory.
It is an intriguing theory. I'm so baffled by the Billy Bush tape thing. I'm now.
Well, we'll get back to that. I'm going to write that guy. Say what's up with it.
Yeah, because I'm looking also at the differential between the two just prior to the Billy Bush tape coming out, and then the differential that
this
it
is at
shrinks
Huffington
to.
Post if you want to go look it up.
Yeah, everyone should have a look at this. And then I'm thinking about the differential that existed between them prior to the Comey letter and then afterwards. I'm not certain that the single biggest change was the Comey letter. It's ironic, but it looks like the single biggest shift was the Billy Bush tape.
The biggest was, but the most important was the Comey. First of all, because it came right before the election, and second of all, it flipped their positions.
Yeah.
As weird as the Billy Bush thing was in terms of why did Clinton's numbers drop, it turns out that still didn't put her below Trump. Trump was not above her until the Comey thing.
Right.
That flipped their positions.
That was the one that flipped
and that's what happened in terms of the election.
I'm not sure what to make of the fact that his biggest gain on her comes from the Billy Bush tape, and then it's the Comey letter that finally flips the thing. I get the difference between, getting closer and then flipping them, but it's wild. Okay, well, it's out there. It's worth thinking about. That's for sure. Holy cow!
Mm-hmm.
What a weird.
Meanwhile, we have healthcare, and again, there's a lot to suggest that what's happening is that Paul Ryan wants this bill to fail. Tom Price goes on TV on Sunday.
How did he go on TV? What is he, Inspector Gadget?
Yeah, well, you have all these Sunday shows.
It just
and Price says
a picture just appears in your house of Tom Price.
Right, but he has these incredible promises.
Okay.
Nobody will be worse off financially.
Good.
The new health care bill aims to increase the number of people covered.
Perfect.
Right?
These
if you're on Medicaid,
things.
you're going to stay, and the expansion is not going to change, Gary Cohn says on Fox News.
This is excellent. This bill sounds better than ever.
Really? And Adriana McIntyre, who is a health policy wonk who tracks this stuff, says it's too early in the morning for this many empirically impossible ACHA promises on Sunday morning. Actually, empirically impossible is a lovely way of saying they're lying about this. And the best theory out there in terms of how and why that could be is that if you really plan on the bill not passing, you don't have to worry about lying about it because nobody's going to hold you to it.
Oh, well, that's true. Nobody's going to fact check it if it doesn't pass.
Yeah, and nobody's going to remember.
True. That's
So what happens? Paul Ryan is, and the Republicans, by the way, are awaiting the CBO scoring this week. And predictions are it's going to suggest it's going to cost a lot more and 15 million people are going to lose their insurance and it's all going to be bad. And I have more stories about that because it's all true. But while this is going on, it looks like Paul Ryan is trying to corral everybody. Trump will probably lean on the Freedom Caucus, who's all for freedom, except they always seem to cave in the end because they somehow managed to rationalize why it's okay to do the exact opposite of what they said they were going to do a week ago. And so I'm predicting it'll actually pass the House and fail in the Senate. And then Paul Ryan will say the House did their job. We did everything we promised. We overturned Obamacare, and it's the Senate's fault. Look at them. And it won't help them because Trump will say, yeah, but it's Ryan Care, and you guys failed, and it's your fault, not mine, because it's never my fault.
That'd be a good play.
Never my fault. So therefore it must be Ryan Care, not Trumpcare that failed. And he might actually have a whole lot of problems, Ryan may have, that will be even bigger and magnified by this.
Could be. I did notice we saw Tom Cotton out there over the weekend saying, warning the House, you absolutely cannot pass this. I'm warning you guys, this would be terrible for you. Of course, it's great for him. If the House doesn't pass it, then he never has a problem. So I think that might be a little bit of what's going on. And I also note some folks also taking note over the weekend. This is the first time Trump has not wanted his name on something, ever.
Right. I put a link for you. Let's see if it works here. Yes, it's a story to the New York Times.
What am I, Inspector Gadget? All right.
How many people are affected by Obamacare premium increases? What percentage do you think?
Nobody now. It's all repealed.
Not yet.
Oh. Fewer than I think. Oh, well, then what's the point?
Right. So if you scroll down.
I give up. Yes. Okay. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, it's really a nice little graphic here that shows most people get their insurance from jobs or government. Right.
But there are no jobs.
But for those who buy it themselves?
More than 90% of Americans who have health insurance, yes.
Very, very small percentage. And of them, people, like 2/3 of them get it from the Obamacare marketplace and therefore get subsidies to help them pay the difference if premiums rise. And that only leaves 1/3 left who buy it directly. So the bottom line is we're talking about 3%.
3% of
3% are going to get killed by these increases in premiums from Obamacare if left unattended. Now that 3% is a very noisy 3% because whenever you're online, people always write in and say, this is me, this happened to me, this happened to me. And you'll go, well, we're looking at the entire country as a whole where 97% didn't have that. Yes, but it happened to me, so you're lying.
Oh. Well,
no,
yes,
97% isn't 100%, and I accept and acknowledge that this happened to you and that it's important and that it needs to be addressed, and with the goodwill of Republicans could be addressed. No, they lied about the whole thing because they said this, that. And you throw up your hands and say, look, you're not getting it. You're not getting it because you don't want to get it. And then you always wonder whether they're lying to you anyway about what they're saying, but you have to assume in good faith that they're telling you the truth.
I don't know.
It's a small percentage of people that this happened with.
Yes.
Very small, 3%.
I guess that is pretty small.
So you're going to scrap the entire program because 3% need to have an adjustment?
Yes. Well, perhaps we could. That's what's on the table now. We could have,
That is what's on the table now. And it makes you scratch your head and say, "What?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?"
3% of the whole country isn't a small number of people, but it's a small percentage. But
it's a small percentage, but a large number of people because there's a large number of people in the country.
Right.
It needs to be addressed. It's acknowledged. Nobody's saying you don't exist. And I was accused of that on the weekend. You're saying we don't exist. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying 3% isn't 100%. I'm
saying microwaves with eyeballs don't exist.
Yeah, all of that. So I thought that was a pretty fascinating piece. And as Paul Krugman points out, as Ryan lies about budget impact of the Affordable Care Act, and that's the other thing, these guys are on TV flat out lying to your face about what they're doing.
Why not?
Right? They are trying to get a huge increase, or a decrease in taxes and a huge increase in revenue to the richest Americans. And they're doing it by taking Medicaid away from you and lying about it. So, as Ryan lies about budget impact of the Affordable Care Act, a reminder, it's now projected to cost 1/3 less than originally predicted, according to the CBO.
Oh. How did the CBO get the ability to score anything all of a sudden?
Well, they've been scoring the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, for a long time, which ought to make it a little easier for them to score the AHCA, American Health Care Act, because they're kind of used to it.
Yes. And they can do it, and they will,
and they will do
it soon.
Jonathan Alter writes, any pundit who ever again praises Paul Wyon's brain and policy chops after this pathetically inept healthcare bill should leave journalism.
Yes, that's true.
I agree.
Yeah.
Who said Paul Ryan was smart? He doesn't know what insurance is. Oh, yes, he does. He's just... No, actually, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's just not that smart.
I don't know.
Why don't you use that as your default instead of trying to apologize for him all the time?
It doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good at all. Anyway, so we have those stories. And then we have another story here. Democrats to turn Obamacare attacks against GOP in 2018. This is from the Pundit Roundup, and it was in Politico. After years of playing defense, Democrats say the politics of healthcare have turned in their favor. The uptick in Obamacare's popularity and GOP's assault on it means that 5 Democratic senators up for re-election in very conservative states are no longer forced to defend Obama's unpopular policies. Instead, they're attacking GOP proposals that will make it hard for some of Trump's lower-income supporters to keep their insurance. And so this is all important because, in fact, it's Trump supporters who are going to be most adversely affected by this. Leading off the Pundit Roundup was this incredibly fascinating, I found it incredibly fascinating, story of West Virginia rural poor attending a clinic and what they say about this and the thinking behind it was pretty amazing. Because this guy is dependent, for example, that they're interviewing, a fellow named Clyde. He's a coal miner. He's a former coal miner. He used to have a highly paid job at a coal mine. Coal insurance, company insurance covered all his needs. Then he lost his job.
Must have had a hell of a union.
Yeah, he's holding a cane, suffering not only from heartburn, but diabetes, arthritis, diverticulitis, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol. And all of his medicines and all of his visits are covered by Medicaid. Okay?
All right.
Before the Affordable Care Act, most West Virginians without children or disabilities could not qualify for Medicaid, no matter how poor they were. The Affordable Care Act, better known here as Obamacare, expanded the program to cover more people.
Right.
Right? So this is the paragraph that just struck me. As for the other problems in his life, he's put his hopes in Trump, who came to West Virginia saying he would bring back coal and put miners back to work. When Trump mentioned repealing Obamacare, Clyde wasn't sure what that might mean for him, for himself, for his Medicaid. But if he had a job that provided health insurance, I would add the way he used to, he reasoned he wouldn't need Medicaid. So he voted for Trump.
That is good reasoning.
Along with 74% of McDowell County. This guy is hobbling around with a cane.
Yeah.
And he's volunteering to go back to the mines because that way he will have a job.
Cane, diabetes, arthritis, diverticulitis, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and the manual labor.
To me, this is like, in a nutshell, why so many people voted against perhaps their best economic interests. And it has to go back to what we talked about on the show weeks and weeks ago. Okay, you're ready to throw stuff at me. The guy felt shamed because he lost his job. Trump promised him, I'll take your shame away. I'll give you your job back. I'll give you your respect. You will get everything you need through your job. And this guy said, oh, I got stars in my eyes. I am voting for this guy. Yeah. I am unshakably for him. Because that's what was important. Mm-hmm. Now, does he think through about what all that means? No.
No. Or if he did, I mean, forget. Who's got time to think about what all that means? He said, I'll give this to you. We said,
you will bring back jobs,
and you
will bring back my respect with it.
Right, sure, of course. And puppy.
Is he being conned? Of course he's being conned.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, in the end, it's going to matter. I have this lovely piece from Kaiser here, looking at polling for the last month in February, last time they had the poll out.
I was all ready to get rid of this. Okay, it's going to matter.
Yeah. Let me just give you this chart here so you can go look at what
we'll
following.
We'll see what matters. Okay.
There it is, again at the bottom of the Skype list. But its worries over losing coverage vary by party affiliation and Trump approval.
Oh, and it's decorated by somebody who went to Syracuse, I see.
So if you went...
or UVA. That could be
That's
UVA.
because of the colors on it.
Right.
It's like really orange. Or maybe they're Daily Coast people. We don't know. Worries over losing coverage vary by party affiliation and Trump approval. So if you're a Republican,
yes,
83% of Republicans are not worried that you or someone in your family is going to lose your health insurance if Obamacare is repealed. And only 17% of Republicans are worried that they will. In independents, it's 50-50, 51-48 to be exact. And in Democrats, 70% are worried and 29% aren't. So Republicans have a very different view of the world than everybody else. Independents are going to find out the hard way, but Republicans are going to find out the hard way. And then if you look at it in terms of approves of President Trump, 74% of those who approve of Trump are not worried that they or somebody they know are going to lose their health care. Whereas 2/3 of those who disapprove of Trump are worried about it.
Like
my point here is that you can say all you want to about none of this matters. It's going to matter. When these people lose their health insurance, they are going to feel it, and they're going to feel like Trump lied to them, and they're going to feel like – now, that doesn't mean that they're going to all turn around and vote for the Democrat, but there is no possible way this has zero impact.
Okay, there's no possible way it has zero impact. I have to agree with that. I'm a little worried. Where's this chart for me where I think they're going to invent some ridiculous reason why it's not Trump's fault, but somebody's going to think it is.
Well, it's God's will. I mean, that's all.
Well, there's that. That was all over the.
That works for everything. I made another piece about that, but that's a different story altogether. I'm just saying that it's not that. The Trump supporters say, I realize he's going to take our health care away, but it's important that we do that because, X, Y, and Z, and so I support everything he does. They are telling the pollsters they don't think he's going to do what he's about to do.
They are saying that. I do hear them say that. Article after article, which I'm getting tired of.
Yeah, but then what happens when he does what he's doing?
I don't
know. It turns out he lied to them. He lied to them about not touching Medicare or Medicaid. He's lying to them about what the impact is going to be in terms of their health insurance. Now, again, the only way he gets away with it is if the bill doesn't pass.
Possibly.
But in the meantime, there's going to be a whole lot of discussion about what that bill means, and that is filtering down to local level.
I guess the thing I've been worried about, or that is emerging in disparate places. In addition to the hardliners who are just never going to believe that anything is Trump's fault, the descriptions of the political dynamics, the descriptions of these new conspiracy theory dynamics that are spinning out there. It's very difficult to predict what the impact is going to be on an administration and an ongoing campaign that just insists that there's magical explanations for everything. Yes, I took your Medicaid away, but I had to because Obama did such a bad job with it that it was destroyed, and I'm just clearing the wreckage.
Yeah, but, I just don't think that's going to fly because, like Clyde there, he understands the difference between I can get my clinic visit covered and I can't. That's like talking about jobs numbers Friday, and you either have a job or you don't have a job, and you understand the difference. And you can, listen to any explanation you want to. You still understand whether or not you have a job.
I always accept that explanation. There's no reason I shouldn't be willing to entertain this one.
Yeah, or as the economists are fond of saying, a recession is when your neighbor's out of work, and a depression is when you're out of work.
There we go. Well,
you can't fool people about that. They understand whether they have that or they don't. Well, so here is an article I dropped off at the end of your Skype thing from Jonathan Cohn, Citizen Cohn, one of our Jonathan Corner people. And he writes, the 3 arguments Republicans are using to rebut predictions about what Obamacare repeal would mean.
Oh.
Argument 1, the CBO isn't reliable. We're seeing that. I don't think that's going to fly. The interesting thing is Mick Mulvaney, who is a Freedom Caucus guy now running the budget office, is going to try that. But, I think that he's going to fail. Argument number 2, the ACA is collapsing anyway, one of the things you just mentioned. But plenty of states have successful, stable markets where consumers can still choose from a variety of plan choices. Plus, they have Medicaid. And so I don't see that working. And then argument number 3 is coverage doesn't matter because it's all about care. That's what Paul Ryan is trying. Where the ultimate goal of healthcare policy is to make sure people can go to a doctor, not whether or not you have coverage. And this is an important concept. Tom Price is pushing this too. The idea is that it's out there, that healthcare, and if you decide not to avail yourself of it, that's your problem.
Like Lamborghinis.
Yeah, you could buy one. You just decided not to. So what do you bother me about? Now, in contrast to that, there's this fascinating article in the Wall Street Journal today, again looking at Trump voters in the rural vote. And the title of the article is, magically appeared in your Skype list, GOP health plan would hit rural areas hard. Poor, older Americans would see the largest increase in insurance coverage costs, analysis shows. Let me give you one example. It's an extreme case, but it drives the point home. In extreme cases, the amount a consumer might owe for a plan could exceed the person's annual income. In Nebraska's Chase County, a 62-year-old currently earning $18,000 a year could pay $20,000 annually to get health coverage under the House GOP plan, compared with $760 a year that the person would owe toward premiums under the Affordable Care Act.
I see. I have a problem with that sentence. You could not pay that.
Well, see, that's the thing. I'm making the point that somebody like that is going to notice, no matter what they're trying to pull.
I think the math will help them notice that's true.
Right.
But yeah, you can't write that sentence. There's a big problem with that. Anna Wild.
You can't pay the premium is a bigger problem than not being able to write the sentence.
Right. A person currently earning $18,000 a year cannot pay $20,000 annually to get health care because they run out of money $2,000 short.
Right.
They could eBay their canes
just not happening.
And the tennis balls at the end of the walkers, but that's not even worth that much.
Article in the Washington Post, and again, this is a theme. You can see this theme here. Sleeper issue of Medicaid's future could prove health care plan stumbling block, and just because there's just so many people who are on it. And so I just don't see the bill passing, as I said, and I think that they're going to start looking for excuses as to why that is. Larry Levitt, who's the senior vice president over at Kaiser, I have a Storify here, just a very quick one.
Yes.
The 5 reasons the CBO will likely project the House GOP bill increases the number of people uninsured, and why are we so confident of that? 1, repealing individual mandate penalties will lead to fewer people covered.
Okay.
Right? 'Cause if you don't have to do it, some people won't.
Yes.
If they don't, they're not covered. But that's also in employer plans. Right now, you have to sign up for something at work. What if you don't? There are some people who say, "I'm not going to sign up."
Yes, I mean you are allowed to do that.
They'll be foolish, but they will.
Or their spouse works somewhere that covers them both. But yeah, I mean you have to have that option. Okay.
Right. So if you opt out, then there's less people covered. So therefore, that's one of the reasons why the CBO is going to say less people are covered. Here's number 2. Lowering refundable tax credits for low-income ACA marketplace enrollees who have gotten covered will lead to more uninsured. A refundable tax credit means that they're going to pay you the money. If you get that tax credit, you're entitled to the tax credit, you get the money.
Even if you don't pay it in taxes.
Even if you don't pay it in taxes. Now you have extra money in your pocket that you can spend on stuff.
Government sends you money. Okay.
Number 3, increasing tax credits for higher income people won't have a meaningful effect on coverage because they're almost all insured anyway. Because the people who have higher income get it through their jobs.
Right. Usually, or else can't afford it.
Right? So if you're going to increase the tax credit available to a higher income person who already has insurance through their job, isn't going to make them more covered than they were before. It's going to be different covered, maybe, possibly not, but not more covered. So you could see why they'd be less covered, and the excuses that the Republicans give as to how, no, this is going to increase it at the other end, doesn't hold. Number 4, eliminating the enhanced matching payments for the Affordable Care Act Medicaid expansion will mean many fewer states will implement it. So if you lose Medicaid enrollees, you have less people covered. And number 5, grandfathering existing Medicaid expansion enrollees will have a diminished effect over time since people's circumstances change. The thing about Medicaid is you don't stay on Medicaid. You get a job, you lose a job, you're on, you're off. It's not that you're on there permanently. So there could be 1,000 people who are on Medicaid, but it's a different 1,000 people next month than it was last month.
All right.
So for all of those reasons, it's likely that the CBO will project the House GOP bill increases the number of people uninsured. And when they say grandfathering existing Medicaid expansion enrollees, what they mean is that there's a provision that you have to stay insured in order to keep getting insured. That was built into the Republican bill. So if you go off insurance, it's not so easy to get back on.
Right.
But people here are always flipping their insurances. They're on, they're off. Maybe they get Medicaid, maybe they don't. Maybe they get through the exchange if it's available. Maybe they don't. Maybe they get employer sponsored insurance, ESI, for a short period of time. Then they don't. And so there could easily be a situation where they don't have continuous coverage, and so they lose out.
Yeah,
now, none of that is going to help increase or boost the number of people who are insured. It's only going to diminish it. And the question is how much, and Brookings says about 15 million, and we'll have to see what the CBO says.
That's more than the 9 million we were worried about before.
Yeah. So, 9, 10, 15, there's going to be a huge number of people, and a lot of them are going to be rural, and a lot of them are going to be Trump voters, and it's going to have an impact, and that's what I'm saying, and that's my point, and that's my story.
Right. Well,
and I'm sticking to it.
I'm thinking of switching to Trump.
Are you? I'm
getting angry with all the people. I'm not supposed to shame them, but I'll be quiet about it. That's all. And I keep hearing that they're going to be hurt the most, and I keep thinking, this is sounding better. It's cruel, but maybe I ought to. I mean, I keep yelling at them for voting against their interests. So the only non-hypocritical thing to do here is vote my interests. If my interests are, killing them.
You got to get your inner revenge under control here.
Yeah, I think I got.
We got an
election
coming up in 2018, and a lot of people are running. Hey, you know what else has happened? Steve King has declared himself an out-and-out white nationalist.
Yes, I keep hearing this, although I keep saying we got to take nationalist out of it. We could just say he's not declaring himself white, but we knew that. But I don't know why they're entitled to nationalism, because that sounds good, almost. It's jingoistic, but... Right? Yeah, people confuse it with patriotic somehow, and I don't think they should be entitled to that. It's not this nation that they're nationalist about either, so I don't know what they're doing. But I heard about that, but I forgot already what is the specific thing that he said.
Well, let's see. I'll find it for you. He said, what did he say?
I don't remember. All Mexican people are terrible, maybe.
No. He
Honduran.
I have this piece about the Iowa GOP chairman breaking with Steve King, saying David Duke isn't welcome in Iowa. Let's see what Steve King did say, and I'll find it.
I forgot already. I saw it, and it registered with me. He's a jerk. And then
he is.
Something. Then I lost track of it. I saw Sean Spicer said something terrible, too, but that's every day.
Okay.
Well, this is
so
true.
he was
Steve
talking
King.
about Holland, the Netherlands.
Ah, yes.
Right?
And they're crazy Geert Wilders.
And he applauded Geert Wilders, including a cartoon of Wilders using his finger plugging a hole in the wall that said Western civilization. And what he wrote is, Wilders understands that culture and demographics are our destiny, Steve King said. And then he said, we can't restore our civilization with somebody else's babies.
We can't restore our civilization with somebody else's babies. So
Yeah.
he and I have to have a baby now?
Yeah, and have to be white.
I heard he was against this.
David Duke, the former leader of the Ku Klux Klan, then praised King's tweets on Twitter. Just in case you were thinking about moving, sanity reigns supreme in Iowa's 4th Congressional District.
Right.
Make America Great Again, Duke wrote, quoting King's tweet.
Oh, that's okay. The opposite of what I thought. All right.
So the GOP chairman in Iowa said, I don't agree with King's statement, and David Duke is not welcome in Iowa.
That's
and, of course, Steve King will win re-election.
Oh, yeah. Well, they like that there.
It'd be nice if he won re-election by less than he otherwise would have. It'd be even nicer if he didn't, but chances are in Iowa's 4th Congressional District, he will win re-election. But I'm told from Iowa people that this is playing a lot and loud in Iowa, and people are not happy with it or King or the statement.
Can't rebuild. What were we rebuilding with other people's babies? Civilization?
Civilization.
Can't rebuild civilization with other people's babies. I don't even really know what it...
Well, there's probably this video
Gotta have
game
white
Civilization. You should play it more often, and then, you get
Oh,
an idea.
my kids play that. I should ask them.
Yeah.
Whose
I'll
babies
ask them.
are you building
They'll
this
answer. What does it mean to rebuild civilization? Well, it takes about an hour.
Right. Whose babies
You just
are
need
you
the right
I'll ask
resources, and you have to ask them: are babies one of the resources you put into the game?
them.
I know there's gold, and I know there's the building materials, and you got to build walls, and you have to arm your
wall out of
armies and
babies.
stuff like that. But are babies part of it?
Maybe. Well, that's a new one on me. I got
That was pretty unique.
You know what? It's funny, yeah, because it passed by. I don't pay a great deal of, I don't invest a great deal of time in Steve King. It's not that I don't pay attention. I understand who he is, what he is, but he says things like that, and it's obvious that he means it in a with a racial tone and in a racist way because he's Steve King. But
Right.
It didn't really occur to me that I ought to sit down. And this one just doesn't make any sense. I mean, I guess the guy is most famous for saying that Mexicans have large calves. So I'm not
Yeah, exactly. So this
gonna
comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Untrue, actually. He said it for a long time. I am having so much fun with you going over this stuff. I'm looking at the time and saying, oh my
right,
goodness,
the daylight.
Look at that. I really ought to go to work at some point before the snowstorm. We're expected to get anywhere between 12 and 24 inches tomorrow.
Oh, well,
But
good
in the
luck.
meantime, let me just say thank you, and it's been great talking to you. This is Greg Dworkin speaking to my friend David Waldman Kagro in the morning. We had a lot of topics that we covered today and a lot of different stories, and hopefully it'll be of interest to you. We'll see what David does for the rest of the show, because who knows? He certainly doesn't. And
Right.
I'll be back Wednesday,
scientist.
and we'll do it again.
Okay, well, thanks very much. Good luck with the snow, and make sure you clear off the other end of the tin can there for Wednesday.
Absolutely. Take care.
Okay, thank you. You do the same. And, wow, we'll catch up on all of this here. I don't know what's going on here. Oh, look at this. What does this mean even? I tweeted something about daylight savings time being annoying, but I got an angry message about this. Let's see. I said this daylight savings thing is working great. I was upset. It's dark out in the morning. But let's see. I have a message here. Very important, clearly. God bless white people, but daylight savings is not as bad as Black Sunday in Selma. With all due respect, STFU. How did I even get to this? Where are we? What? I'm not even certain that makes any sense, but she's very upset about it. And I didn't realize it was such a touchy racial issue that I don't like getting up in the dark in daylight savings on Monday, which is not Sunday. But all right. Basically, never tweet is the answer there. I don't know. You tell me what that's supposed to mean. And I guess I was supposed to acknowledge that I'm not supposed to have any issues with it being dark outside because, after all, there are terrible things happening in the world. And how can we sleep when our beds are burning? Okay, fantastic. I'll be right down there. I'll get to your rally just after the show. All right. What do I know? I'm not. What am I, Inspector Gadget? I don't need evidence. Okay, not sure what made her upset, but if you know, well, frankly, keep it to yourself. Okay, let's see. We can catch up on another number of other issues. What do we have there in pocket to catch up on? Yes, this morning I put out in the Daily Coast Radio is Live this morning post the warning from Sahil Kapoor and a couple of other journalists I saw catch on to this one somewhere on the president's schedule, whether that's now, early in the morning, which I really doubt because it's Trump, plus, he lost an hour of sleep, so he says he doesn't sleep much, but whatever it is he does, hang upside down, lie down in a coffin, I don't know, but an hour less of it last night than he's used to. And somewhere on his schedule is the signature of an executive order, or maybe an executive order, maybe a memorandum, I don't know, that says, well, it's entitled Comprehensive Plan for Reorganizing the Executive Branch. Not sure, and nobody is sure at this point, what's going to be in it. The text of it isn't available, but the title is. And my best guess, like my most serious actual guess, is that it has something to do with his professed disinterest in staffing the vast majority of the executive branch of the federal government. I say his expressed disinterest because one, because he's expressed it, and two, I'm not certain whether he really meant to do things this way, but the slow walking of all of the nominations and the realization among Senate Democrats that if they simply availed themselves of the rules on every nomination that Donald Trump made that was subject to Senate approval, then they could eat the entire Congress, essentially, and then they could use up all 2 years of the 115th Congress with very, very little time, very, very limited floor time available for actual legislative initiatives, which is probably okay with Trump because he doesn't have any legislative initiatives and doesn't believe that he's subject to the regular process. That he believes since Obama, he heard on the radio, used a lot of executive orders to do illegal stuff, he can do the same thing. Anyway, it may be that he has adjusted to these tactics in the Senate by simply saying, I don't want to fill those positions anyway. There's a piece, we read a little bit about it. We talked a little bit about the personnel problems toward the end of last week, and there's a new piece in the New York Times that covers some of the same ground, but I guess, we've got some new stuff here too. This is a piece entitled, Trump Lets Key Offices Gather Dust Amid Slowest Transition in Decades. And there's a picture here of the what turns out to be the William Jefferson Clinton Federal Building in Washington, D.C. It is the home of the Environmental Protection Agency, and there's a big flock of birds, or I don't know, it looks like twilight, maybe it's bats, flying around nearby. Very interesting. There's your environment for you. Thank God we saved the environment for those filthy creatures I don't know, I'm not sure what they are, flying around here. And it doesn't say in the caption either. Anyway, this piece written by Julie Hirschfeld Davis and Sharon Lafreniere. How about that for a surname? At the State Department. We read a little bit about this, or talked a little bit about it, and we never did read through the entirety of the article. I think I recommended it one weekend for reading. Just what the impact around Foggy Bottom, the area of Washington, D.C., where the State Department building resides, and which is now shorthand for State Department and the State Department culture, Foggy Bottom is. People who are used to frenzied, frenetic, any other F words? Probably. Pace in their working day in, day out, years on end. They love what they're doing, but it's hectic pace, breakneck speed at which they move. Now everything at a crawl, and they're looking for ways to waste time from 9 to 5 just to put in a day at the office and have some coffee and drive around in their Priuses a little bit and before knocking off. They used to be working, 12-hour days and around the clock and loving it, and now they got nothing to do. The State Department particularly hard hit here. Anyway, this piece starts off with a note and a nod toward that. At the State Department, the normally pulsating hub, it's got me hot under the collar already, of executive offices is hushed and virtually empty. At the Pentagon, military missions in some of the world's most troubled places are being run by a defense secretary who has none of his top team in place. And at departments like Treasury, Commerce, and Health and Human Services, many senior posts remain vacant even as the agencies have been handed enormous tasks like remaking the nation's health insurance system. From the moment he was sworn in, President Trump faced a personnel crisis starting virtually from scratch in lining up senior leaders for his administration. 7 weeks into the job, he is still hobbled by the slow start, months behind where experts in both parties, even some in his administration, say he should be. The lag has left critical power centers in government devoid of leadership as he struggles to advance policy priorities on issues like healthcare, taxes, trade, and environmental regulation. Many federal agencies and offices are in states of suspended animation. They're career civil servants answering to temporary bosses whose influence and staying power are unclear and who sometimes are awaiting policy direction from appointees whose arrival may be weeks or months away. It's enough to make you wonder whether it's a good thing or a bad thing to delay putting all these people in place. And the answer is Donald Trump is the one deciding who's qualified to go into these slots. It's a good thing. Keep it slow. Yes, it keeps the government paralyzed. Yes, Trump wants or says he wants to paralyze the government. But, again, this is like the kid who keeps screwing everything up and saying, I meant to do it this way. Or the cat who runs into the sliding glass door. I meant that. That was the old George Carlin routine, I think it was. I don't know. Maybe I got the comedian wrong. Anyway, it doesn't bother me that, am I playing right into President Bannon's hands here? He says he wants to deconstruct the administrative state. Well, to the extent that he would like to place people in these offices to make it easier for him to do, I don't care to help. And to the extent that he's able to disassemble or deconstruct the administrative state more easily when those jobs are vacant, I also don't care, because it means that there's less legislative time on the floor, and I still think that largely is the best thing we have going for us. If there's a way to prevent both, let me know, and we'll try and implement it. But in the meantime, the one thing I think we can do is keep their henchmen out of those offices and make the deconstruction of the state happen by atrophy, I guess, as opposed to by active undermining that might require a lot more work to undo later on. I'm not certain about that, but keep that in mind, because this paints a bleak picture, and the liberal tendency is to say, to rush in there and try and fix it up, like we have OCD about these things. I can't have this in disarray. Technocracy, is that a word? Technocratic tendencies that we have make us want to rush in there and say, all right, it may be terrible policy, but at least it should be, at least the procedure should work correctly. Let it be for now. I don't know if I can do anything else for you. Anyway, all right, let's see. Where were we with this one? The lag has left critical power centers. I think, did we do this one? Yes, this is the one with the lag, leaving critical power centers devoid of leadership, career civil servants answering to temporary bosses, suspended animation, etc. There's no question this is the slowest transition in decades, and that may or may not be tied to this is the slowest president in decades. This is the comment of R. Nicholas Burns, not Montgomery, but R. Nicholas, a former State Department official who served under presidents of both parties. There you have it. He's so centrist, and has been involved in transitions since 1988, like ancient times. This is a very, very big mistake The world continues. It doesn't respect transitions. And again, I understand it's a very, very big mistake, but I think a larger mistake would be to give him what he wants and open up the floor for his legislative agenda as well. But I can't promise, but that's my best guess right now. Mr. Trump has insisted that the barren ranks of his government are not a shortcoming, but the vanguard of a plan to cut the size of the federal bureaucracy. A lot of those jobs I don't want to appoint because they're unnecessary to have, Mr. Trump told Fox News last month. I say, what do all these people do? You don't need all those jobs. And it's very Trump-like to say something like that. But I remember, this is the same lunkhead who just like a week ago said, who knew healthcare could be so complicated? Who knew that all these people who I didn't know what they do did things that were important? Well, you're a stone moron on healthcare. You're a stone moron on running the government too. Let that not be a surprise to anyone. Just trying to help. But the president has not proposed any plan for trimming crucial senior positions, and a White House spokeswoman, Lindsay E. Walters, by the way, no friggin' shortage of White House spokespeople. This is like the 19th one in the last week. Whatever happened to Hope Hicks? How does she do it? She does it all by herself. And then all of a sudden she does nothing. She's still there. I see pictures of her holding phones to her head all day long. No one's quoting her anymore. Sean Spicer is there. The Huckabee kid has got an internship there. It's a paid job. And now Lindsay Walters, who I never heard of it, plus Hope Hicks is in there somewhere too. And the one who didn't get the job, Scaramucci or whatever his name is, and the other guy got the job instead. There's like 19 White House spokespeople, all of whom have no evidence and can't say anything. But those are the jobs we're keeping. What do all these people do? This guy here, he says his job is Deputy Undersecretary for Relations with the European Union. What is that? What does that even mean? I don't know. It's in the job title. You know what the European Union is? I hate unions. It's a different kind of union, whatever. The delegate to the Organization of American States. What is that? Who even knows? I know you don't understand what the Organization of American States is, but it's a thing, and this guy takes care of that. What do you mean, what does he do? Undersecretary for, it's right in the, what do all these people do? I don't know. It's written down. That's the problem. You don't read. No wonder you don't know. Anyway, there's no plan. He says there's a plan for, this is all part of my plan to trim the federal government. But there is no plan. And according to this White House spokeswoman, number 95 here, Lindsay Walters, she said he eventually planned to fill them. So the plan is, I'm not going to fill them now, but I'm going to fill them later. But then I'm not going to, because also my plan is, you see, okay, so there's no plan. There's not even enough plan to tell Lindsay to say there's a plan. So, you're right. ISIS, check, got to get an ISIS plan. Number 2 on my to-do list, tell Lindsay Walters what we are up to here in the White House. Mr. Trump's personnel problems, and his personal problems, are rooted in a dysfunctional transition effort that left him without a pool of nominees in waiting who had been screened for security and financial problems and were ready to be named on day one. Promised them all on day one, but he didn't think there was going to be a day one, so he didn't get ready. In the weeks since, the problem has been compounded by roadblocks of his own making. A loyalty test that in some cases has eliminated qualified candidates. A 5-year lobbying ban that has discouraged some of the most sought-after potential appointees. And a general sense of upheaval at the White House that has repelled many others. I don't think anybody's really worried about the 5-year lobbying ban because he's not actually going to impose that. If he did, then the people who have taken the few jobs in those transition beachhead teams wouldn't have accepted him, unless he told them that they would be exempt from the lobbying ban if they just worked the beachhead jobs, but then they actually turned into permanent jobs. That's a way to work around some of it, too. I mean, he could just change his mind and say, I'm not banning lobbying. But he could stick to it. I kept my promise. Anybody who worked permanently in the Trump administration would be banned from lobbying for 5 years. All of these lobbyists who are working in the administration now and who will go back to lobbying later were temporary employees. We just needed them for 4 years. That's how, but 4 years is temporary too. Can't press me on that, right? Nobody said that it had to last less than 4 years. Well, that's a prediction for you. Wait and see. Officials involved in and briefed on the situation described it on the condition of anonymity, unwilling to be quoted disparaging Mr. Trump or his administration. Which it wouldn't be because it's totally his plan, but whatever. The numbers paint an unmistakable picture, though. While Mr. Trump has won confirmation of 18 members of his cabinet, he has not nominated anyone for more than 500 other vital posts and has fallen behind his predecessors in filling the important second and third tier positions that carry out most of the government's crucial daily functions. As of Sunday, he had sent to the Senate 36 nominations for critical positions, just over half of the 70 sent by President Barack Obama, who was also criticized for early delays. And at the same point in 2009 of his administration, according to figures compiled by the nonpartisan Center for Presidential Transition at the Partnership for Public Service. You got all that? Okay. In the vast majority of cases, Mr. Trump's administration has not even begun the lengthy screening process, which can take several weeks to as long as 2 months, that nominees must complete before their confirmations can be considered by the Senate, unless they rank high enough, basically, is what the answer is. Usually your transition, leading off the transition at the top level posts, right? Your cabinet level posts. So you win the election, and right around November 15th, you've got the bulk of your ideas about who's going to serve in your cabinet, and you start vetting them, and that's why the transition takes so long. And you can get the transition process for the top level guys done between November and January, and then vote them in on day one. But he started late, and he didn't bother vetting, and some of them didn't feel like being vetted, and they didn't finish their paperwork, et cetera, et cetera. So he's way behind. Obama was apparently way behind as well at this point in 2009, but Trump is less than halfway to where Obama was. So by comparison, there you have it. That's going to drive him up the wall too, I'm sure. That's why he's blaming everybody else for it. Okay, so in the majority of cases, Mr. Trump's administration hasn't even begun the screening process. According to data obtained by the New York Times, the Office of Government Ethics, the independent agency that conducts financial reviews of every presidential nominee, has received only 63 disclosure reports for prospective Trump administration nominees as of March 5th. Less than a third of the 228 that Mr. Obama's team had submitted by that date in 2009. But of course, it's daylight savings time, so there you have it. At the State Department, both deputy-level jobs remain unfilled, along with the posts of 6 undersecretaries and 22 assistant secretaries, though they all have assistants, we found out on Friday, right? All the people who have these jobs, they're going to have it easy when they get there because they've all got personal assistants, because those guys don't need Senate confirmation. But the people that they're supposed to be assisting are nowhere to be found. And I think that that might actually work, and that might be part of the executive order. The executive order may just be in cases where there's no nominee, no appointee in place, their special assistants will handle that job temporarily. And if that turns out to be 4 years long, what are you going to do? Let the chips fall where they may. That might be part of what this is all about. In other words, a circumvention of the Senate. It'll be an interesting play. We'll see how it works. I think it probably would. Anyway, let's see. We'll move on here. At Treasury, Mr. Trump has yet to name a deputy secretary, general counsel, or even a chief financial officer. And who really needs a chief financial officer at the Treasury anyway, right? Come on. How hard can it be? How many dollars have you got? Is that difficult? I don't think so. Just count them. Also missing 3 undersecretaries, 9 assistant secretaries over at the Department of Homeland Security, one of 3 agencies for which the president has nominated a deputy. He has yet to name any of the 4 undersecretaries, 3 assistant secretaries, or other crucial players like a chief of citizenship and immigration services or a commissioner of customs and border protection. We really have sliced and diced that whole operation up into a bunch of new acronyms. And all of our LGBTQ activists must be having fun with the fact that the new immigration services head would be, or we need the chief of citizenship and immigration services, or CIS. That's got to be fun too. I'll leave it. When did that happen? I don't know. Anyway, also missing the customs and border commissioner. Okay, so I don't understand why all this seems to be used to be compact. We had, and wasn't it ICE before? Citizenship and Immigration Services, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, and a Customs and Border Protection. I don't know. Well, he could fix that. That could stand some fixing by executive order. I'll give him that. That would be a great area to work on. Ms. Walters, the White House spokeswoman, the 19th one that we heard of, denied any substantial delay in staffing the government, because why not, saying that there is no holdup. And in that sense, she's right. There's the germ of truth in that one, too. There's no holdup in the Senate because nobody's been nominated. So there is no holdup. Maybe that's what she meant. But she added that the administration was now screening a large pool of prospective nominees. A senior White House official put the number at about 130, whom it would soon name for crucial positions. That would still, of course, be about 100 behind Obama at the same point in time when he was way behind, for perspective. The official, who spoke on the condition of anonymity because he was not authorized to detail internal deliberations, said that since Inauguration Day, the White House had set a pace for filling positions that rivaled the rate of previous administrations, just from way behind. I'm a rival, I'm just losing. And was now moving as quickly as the meticulous personnel process would allow. Mr. Trump's presidential campaign was a compact operation, so he did not have the potentially thousands of political aides that other new presidents have rewarded with plum jobs, the official added. He just took all the state people and gave them the plum jobs. The staffing delays appear to reflect Mr. Trump's lack of experience in government and his deep suspicion of anyone with such a background, 2 significant factors in his flawed transition. Another challenge has been the president's attempt to apply to the sprawling federal bureaucracy the same mode of leadership he has used for decades in his business, which sucks, where he placed exclusive trust in a small insular team. All right. We'll see whether that does that improve anything for him. All right. The approach that the president took as a businessman, bankruptcy, and a candidate, can't argue too much about that, I guess, is simply not scalable to the challenge of filling out the rest of the government leadership, said Max Stier, or Steyer, depending on how you pronounce it, the president of the Center for Presidential Transition. Didn't his name come up and we mispronounce it or puzzled over the pronunciation on Friday? If agencies lack leaders who understand their operations and policies, if something terrible like that were to happen, if agencies lack leaders who understand a goddamn thing about what they're supposed to be doing, that is bad, essentially, right? If they lack their understanding of operations and policies, and have the president's trust, if they, that is to say, if they lack leaders who understand stuff and who have the president's trust, like if we lack people who have the president's trust, said Carlos M. Gutierrez, who served as Commerce Secretary under President George W. Bush, it just makes the whole function of the executive branch less effective. That's true. Maybe it's a good thing. It's certainly the sort of thing that Bannon and Trump are comfortable saying they want to do on purpose. So, all right. What's next? It is a big problem because either the agency is not well represented or isn't represented at all, Mr. Gutierrez said. Outside the government, he added, foreign diplomats, business people, and others don't know who to call or who to talk to. Who are you going to call? Ghostbusters. Yeah, that was on last night, so I remember it. The lag could also undercut Mr. Trump's global influence. When trade ministers of Pacific Rim nations, including China, meet this week in Chile, the United States will be represented by its ambassador to Chile, Carlos Z. Perez, a career diplomat, because no trade official has been confirmed. And in fact, no ambassador to Chile, no new ambassador to Chile has been confirmed. We just left the other one in place. Did I say the name of did I say it wrong? Carol Z. Perez. I think maybe, did I skip by it and say Chile, and so therefore it had to be Carlos Perez? Did I just say that? I don't know. I have the feeling that I did. Carol Perez. Okay. Well, I hope I didn't make that mistake. And if I didn't, then I just blew it by making it after the fact, and you should ignore that. At the Pentagon, Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, thank God they just remembered that he has a real first name, don't call him General Mattis, is overseeing missions in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Yemen without his own leadership team. And I think we mentioned 2 weeks back, I think like the Friday before last, about what's going on in unleashing the rules of engagement in Yemen. We're more detail emerging about that in the last couple of days, but suffice to say that his big plan for dealing with Yemen, Mr. I'll be so good at the military your head will spin, has been to say, whatever General Mattis wants to do in Yemen is okay by me. You know, just you come and tell me if something explodes. Otherwise, it's up to him. That's the big plan. And it's the ISIS plan as well, I'm sure. Because he knows better than the generals. Just do what the generals say. That's how well I know them. It's all bizarre. There's no sense in looking for logic in it. And that's the other lesson of the weekend, too, by the way. Okay. Some nominees, including the billionaire Vincent Viola, Mr. Trump's choice for Army Secretary, had to withdraw because background checks, which would normally have been completed weeks earlier, revealed insurmountable problems like financial entanglements, which if you had done such a review on the president, you would also find the same thing, but we don't do that, and there's no such thing as a conflict of interest for the president, according to the president, which is a conflict of interest when he says that. But anyway, that all swept aside, apparently. That has left Mr. Mattis, that's correct, to rely on holdovers like Robert O. Work. The O stands for over. The Deputy Defense Secretary under Mr. Obama, and senior civil servants. This, by the way, I'll take a pause to say, fueling a lot of conspiracy theories all by itself. Everything that goes wrong with the administration now is blamed on holdovers from the Obama administration who are actively working as a shadow government to undermine yada, yada, yada. In other words, the deep state. Oh, my God. These are all people that you forgot to replace. That's the deep state. People who used to work for the other administration who are still there because you haven't fired them or replaced them, and somebody needs to turn the lights on. That's the deep state. So how many deep state officials does it take to change a light bulb? The answer is 1, because nobody from the Trump beachhead team has shown up to learn how to do it instead. Deep state. Look out. Anyway, where were we with this? This is like the 5th time I've asked this question. He is really missing 3 to 4 levels of his leadership team. It's all levels. Said Michelle Flournoy. Flournoy. How does she pronounce that one? I know this name. Undersecretary of Defense for Policy under Mr. Obama, who said she removed herself from consideration to be Mr. Mattis's deputy because she did not agree with the new administration's values and policy direction. The White House personnel system has really put an emphasis on loyalty to Trump. I told you about that last week. And they have ruled out anyone who's ever said anything bad about him. And that's almost everybody, because once there was a primary. Stephen T. Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, identified potential nominees for senior posts early on, because he's run a big business, badly, but he did it, including Jim Donovan, a Goldman Sachs executive, gee whiz, what a surprise, whom he wants to be his deputy. But one official close to the process said the White House had hesitated over the political risk of bringing another alumnus of the investment bank into an administration that had styled itself a champion of blue-collar Americans. A nomination probably remains weeks away, according to another person familiar with the situation. As of Sunday, the list of Treasury officials on the department's website was empty, save for the words, "This page is temporarily unavailable." That guy is terrible. At the Environmental Protection Agency, Scott Pruitt, the administrator, was confirmed by the Senate last month, and he has hired a chief of staff and a few others, but the White House has yet to nominate anyone to fill another dozen key jobs requiring Senate confirmation, like the assistant administrators who oversee clean air and water regulation. What do they do? Who knows? Who can even tell what these people do? Well, they oversee clean air and water regulation. I know, but really, who can tell? What am I, Inspector Gadget? Inspector Guy Who Can Tell? Huh? That I'm William Tell? The offices sit empty, even as Mr. Trump says he wants the EPA to start rolling back several major Obama-era regulations, including a rule on water pollution. It will be impossible for them to carry out that agenda unless they can get people in place, said Jeffrey Homestead, an assistant EPA administrator under Mr. Bush. It's not impossible. It just won't go very well. They'll do things like they did with the immigration ban. You could have had lawyers draft it for you, but that would have meant hiring lawyers and vetting them and getting them in place and buying pencils for them and little name plates for their desks. So instead, I have seen Matlock, so what the hell? I'll give this a try myself. Oh, okay. Totally demolished by the courts? I'll rewrite it. Well, how about this? Here's some language rolling back several major Obama-era regulations. Oh, I did it wrong? This is my shopping list? Is that what okay. Well, I could wait for the professionals to get in place and do it, but why don't I just keep redoing it until it passes muster with the court? And so long as it doesn't, I'll just say, the deep state is trying to prevent me from I keep saying, roll all the stuff back, just like Walmart. Roll it all back. Rollin'. Keep those bad regulations rolling out of the way. And the court doesn't like this. It's not my fault. It's liberals trying to run a shadow government. So far, that's working. Adding to Mr. Trump's challenge is an approach to personnel that at times appears haphazard. A little bit. He abruptly asked 46 United States attorneys to submit their resignations on Friday and immediately clean out their desks, leaving himself the task of appointing replacements around the country. By the way, yes, Senate confirmation needed for those guys. Analysts say Mr. Trump's approach also betrays a fundamental misunderstanding of how the government works. That might be important for the presiding officer of the government. We'll see. They can think this lack of appointments as being a lean government, but this isn't like running a small business, said Terry Sullivan, the executive director of the White House Transition Project, a nonpartisan organization that tracks the pace of appointments. Now, that might be something we don't need, because I feel like we have at least 4 organizations that can already tell me he's way behind on appointments. But apparently we got another one, the White House Transition Project. This we can't narrow down. It's not government, so what can I tell you? The federal government is quantum times larger. Is that proper? Than the largest American corporation. It puts ExxonMobil in the shade. And we have the ExxonMobil guy, just to let you know. It is a reflection of naivete about how big the U.S. government is. I believe that. The personnel crisis has become something of a self-fulfilling prophecy, discouraging some experienced policy specialists from joining Mr. Trump's government. Rodney L. Whitlock, a health policy consultant and former longtime aide to Senator Chuck Grassley, herein referred to as Charles E. Grassley, Republican of Iowa, said the 5-year lobbying ban was a deterrent from pursuing a position with the administration. If I stayed in for 3 years and then I stepped out, when could I lobby? Mr. Whitlock said, I would be 60. I've got kids to put through college, and I'm not the only one. Wah, too bad. Beyond that, he said, a perception of chaos, right or wrong, makes people uncomfortable. By the way, another thing that makes people uncomfortable, asking, when can I lobby? That's actually the end of the piece here, and it's led me to a couple of things that I really should bring up and other articles that we've got for you. Let's see. We'll go back and make some notes here. There was the U.S. attorneys thing. That's definitely an issue. And what else? Right before then, we had, well, we'll see what we can find in Pocket and see if that reminds me. But yeah, another big story over the weekend, huge story, asking, I guess this now says 46. I had it as 45, U.S. attorneys to leave their jobs. Yes, it's actually routine eventually for a president to get around to replacing most, if not all, of the U.S. attorneys. That is true. And yeah, there have been some mass calls for mass resignations before, but usually because they have people in mind that they want to put in their place. Here, with 46 of them, there's no doubt that they don't have anybody. They're just going to, it's not even that far removed from what other administrations have done to find the replacements either. They'll just go to the local political structure where they have friends and say, who do you have? Who do you want to be U.S. attorney? Experienced, not experienced, massage therapist, perhaps, whatever you got. Another of the big stories of the weekend. Apparently somebody terminated from inside of, I don't even remember which department it was. It was a massage therapist. Now, massage therapy, it's a serious thing, but whatever. Apparently not good there, and also a racist. So that's bad. The big story that everybody focused on with the U.S. attorneys was the dismissal of Preet Bharara. You know what? I don't think I've ever said his name aloud. Preet Bharara. Bharara, you tell me. Anybody ever heard the name pronounced? Again, I read my news much more than I see it on television. I should probably watch more TV news. One, I'd understand the president better. Maybe that's not such a good thing. Two, I would get the pronunciations either correct or similarly incorrect, which is be indistinguishable for most intents and purposes. But Preet Bharara here, this is interesting too. I mean, I got mixed feelings about all of the U.S. attorneys who are being, the idea of dismissing them, about him in particular. He's been portrayed by, I assume, his allies as the terror of Wall Street. But I don't know that, we've really seen evidence of that. There have been an awful lot of people that did not get prosecuted for anything, who should be in jail, lock them up, from Wall Street who aren't. And it's not hard to find progressives who were never particularly impressed, at a minimum, by his performance there. But the fact that Donald Trump wants him out has raised a lot of sympathy for him, and now he's sort of a heroic figure because he in fact was asked to resign and then said, well, I won't. And I read that and I said, okay, so then they'll fire him. And then in a couple hours they said, okay, then you're fired. And that was supposed to be like some kind of huge coup for him. And in a way, I guess that it is. Now, of course, people are paying attention to this, and there's good reason to pay attention to his dismissal, as it turns out. So I think he played it correctly. I don't know if the rest of us reacted to it correctly, but he played it correctly. He made Trump fire him, and that gives us room for stories like this one here from New York Magazine. Gabriel Sherman, to be precise, and Gabriel Sherman's a name I actually recognize. I'm getting better at recognizing some of these people. Didn't we read tons of Gabriel Sherman during the campaign? He seemed to have a real lock on what Trump, what I agreed with him that a lot of times, that what Trump was all about. He had a very jaundiced view of what Trump was about and what he was doing, and I agreed with it, and he may be right, he may be wrong, but I liked it. And so that's how you'll recognize the name. He wrote some things that I thought were really insightful pieces. We could all be wrong in the end, but this is the one I'm going with. The big winner in Donald Trump's decision to fire Preet Bharara might be Rupert Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch is very frequently the big winner of a lot of things, and because he's got a lot of money, and he rigs it that way. So there's a good chance that he's right about this one. What's he talking about? Throughout his 6-decade career working on 3 continents, Rupert Murdoch has used his media properties to advance the prospects of politicians whose policies help his business interests. Whether it was Margaret Thatcher's union busting in the 1980s, or, this was an interesting bit, Rudy Giuliani's campaign to put Fox News on the Time Warner cable system in the 1990s. Murdoch went all out for leaders who allowed him to protect and expand his corporate empire. I guess if you ever wondered why, I remember now, growing up, that there were the three big networks. And if you wanted to make it in big time network news, you were talking about ABC, NBC, CBS. And Fox News just sort of muscled its way in. And we all forget, Fox News, I mean, in the age of almost ubiquitous, almost universal among wealthy enough folks to be listening to a podcast like this one, I guess. We should be honest about that, progressive or not. Cable news, among people who have cable subscriptions, you forget after a while that there was a time when there was no Fox News, and it muscled its way in. And these other three were holdovers from the broadcast era. Fox News Channel, the news channel, as opposed to the Fox affiliates around the country, was never a broadcast thing. It was purely cable and satellite delivery. And there was a time, I guess, in the early 1990s, right after the actual start of the Fox News cable, Fox News network, that it was an upstart and it wasn't on the biggest cable provider packages because it was brand new and they were monopolies and they tightly controlled this stuff. And they didn't want to let an upstart in unless the upstart was paying them a lot of money. So apparently Rudy Giuliani was big in muscling Fox News' way into the Time Warner lineup. And once you're in the Time Warner lineup, that makes you practically the industry standard. And then all of a sudden, boom, they're a fourth national network. And then boom, they wrecked our politics for a quarter of a century. And who knows how long beyond that. But I guess that was Rudy Giuliani's doing, and so voila, all of a sudden lots and lots of money and influence are falling in line behind Rudy Giuliani, despite the fact that he has no discernible talent. Suddenly he's America's mayor, and we're never rid of him, despite the fact that he never achieved another goddamn thing in his life. So that's something to say for the power of money. Since Election Day, this last one that is, Murdoch, now the executive chairman of Fox News, you know why he's the executive chairman of Fox News? Because Roger Ailes is a filthy pig and a rapist, essentially, and he's out. And so Murdoch has to take over on his own network. He thought he was retired. Every time they think he's out, somebody molests somebody else and they keep pulling him back in, right? So he's back as executive chairman of Fox News, and he has personally nudged the network in a more pro-Trump direction. Sources tell me, that is to say, sources tell Gabriel Sherman. And you might recall that earlier in the election cycle, even after he won the nomination, there was a time when Trump was, or rather, Fox News remained reliably conservative, if neo-conservative, but they didn't necessarily count themselves as in Trump's camp 100%. More and more, of course, that's becoming the case, and apparently that is due to Rupert Murdoch's influence. He's a billionaire. He's friends with the guy who thinks he's a billionaire, and they have an affinity for one another, and he's helping out. That effort included anointing Trump-friendly Tucker Carlson as the successor to Megyn Kelly as host in the 9 p.m. slot. Fox News staffers are also grumbling that segments now have to fit a pro-Trump narrative, one insider told me. Whether or not that's true, it certainly would explain a lot in terms of our theory about how everything is projection over there. You all have anti-Trump narratives, and all your stories have to fit it. Well, it's easy for you to think that because you, of course, have the opposite thing going on. Everything has to have a pro-Trump narrative. Trump seems to be returning the goodwill. How about this? He asked Murdoch to submit names for FCC commissioner and tweeted praise for Fox News. That's not such a big deal, but the FCC commissioner thing sounds bad. Now he's even taking policy ideas from the network. Murdoch may be poised to reap an even bigger win from the Trump administration action coming up. Now, I'll tell you what that's going to be, but once again, just to stop and make note of that, right? He's taking policy ideas from the network. Now, basically, whatever's on Fox and Friends in the morning, he starts tweeting angrily about and will insist is going to become his government's policy. That is a pretty major leverage situation, I would think, for Rupert Murdoch. He can essentially, as in the position he's in, he can tell him, look, this is what I want to be on Fox and Friends this morning. And when the old man wakes up, he's a young man compared to Rupert Murdoch, I guess. When the young man wakes up eventually in the White House and starts shuffling around in his slippers, I want this on the air during his regular viewing time, so he'll start anger tweeting about it, and then we'll get what we want out of things. Okay. So what else does he want to get out of him? Well, here's this bit here. On Saturday, Trump oversaw the firing of Preet Bharara, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Manhattan, whose office is in the middle of a high-profile federal investigation of, in addition to lots of Russians who happen to have some weird connections to Trump and the Trump Organization and Trump allies, they're in the middle of also investigating Fox News. Yes. The probe, according to sources, is looking at a number of potential crimes, including whether Fox News executives, like Roger Ailes, broke laws by allegedly obtaining journalists' phone records or committed mail and wire fraud by hiding financial settlements paid to women who accused Roger Ailes of sexual harassment. Sources tell me that prosecutors have been offering witnesses immunity to testify before a federal grand jury that's already been impaneled. Trump's decision to fire Bharara ignited speculation that it was designed to blunt investigations like the Fox News probe, and of him, of course. In November, Trump had promised Bharara that he could remain on the job, but on Friday he reversed course and requested his resignation along with 45 other Obama-appointed U.S. attorneys. According to the intrigue, Trump's prosecutor purge came less than 24 hours after Sean Hannity said on Fox News that Trump should purge the Justice Department of Obama-appointed officials. Once again, it got on the air in Fox News, and then it happened. Given that Fox News is Murdoch's most profitable division, the prospect of indictments is a serious problem. They're really worried, one source close to the network said. Another insider said that Fox News executives considered the investigation political because Bharara had been appointed by Barack Obama, the previously elected president of the United States, which is why, for Murdoch, it must be a relief that Bharara's replacement could be an ally. How do you like this one? According to the Times, Trump's short list to replace Bharara includes Mark Mukasey. Do you recognize the last name, Mukasey? Who just happens to be the former Fox News chief Roger Ailes' personal lawyer. Wouldn't that be a kick in the pants? And I don't even know exactly whose pants it would be a kick in. A lot of people would get kicked in the pants over this one. The U.S. Attorney for Southern District of Manhattan is investigating Fox News, and in particular Roger Ailes, to find out whether any criminal laws were violated in the way he handled the cover-up of his sexual harassment. And the new U.S. Attorney will be the attorney who previously represented Roger Ailes in this investigation. I think that would probably change the direction of the investigation. So I don't know if that's somebody who would get Senate approval, but who knows? You know, they've got 52 votes. We can't tell. They might just let that roll by. Considering Mukasey's close relationship with Ailes, he would surely come under pressure to recuse himself from the Fox News probe if he were appointed by Trump to succeed Bharara. I have no comment, Mukasey said, when I reached him on Sunday evening and asked him if he planned to do so should he get the job. Of course, he's going to stay mum on that one. Other reports noting, by the way, Mark Mukasey, for one thing, the son of former Attorney General under George W. Bush, Michael Mukasey, and also a partner, I guess. I'm not 100% sure about that one, but I assume so at his level. Partner in the firm where Rudy Giuliani currently works. Is that Greenberg Traurig? I can't even remember if I have that correct. One of these stories has got that, and we'll double check on that one. But important to note one way or the other. Let's see, some more stuff from the Washington Post that didn't save right. Let's see what those are. Oh, yes, okay, there's that strange story. I have to open these up on the air and waste your time for just a second. Okay, let's see. This one doesn't lead to anything in particular, so we'll put this one aside, see if we can guess what that was supposed to be later. This one is just one of those stories you got to put on record every once in a while. You would have seen this one, I'm sure, over the weekend by the Fix's Aaron Blake in the Washington Post. GOP congressman, here we're talking about Mike Kelly of Pennsylvania, offers strange Obama conspiracy theory and even stranger explanations. You remember the deep state nonsense we were mentioning before. Mike Kelly took the White House's deep state conspiracy theory and added some mustard to it. Hope it wasn't Dijon. In a newly uncovered speech last week, Kelly said that not only is there a widespread government effort to undermine President Trump, but that it's being led by none other than former President Barack Obama, who's not busy at all, running a shadow government. But while the conspiracy theory is strange enough, the explanations offered by Kelly's office are something to behold. First, here's what Kelly said last Saturday at a local Republican Party Lincoln Day dinner, and we have some huge embedded video. Can we just take this as the transcript here rather than playing the video? President Obama himself said he was going to stay in Washington until his daughter graduated, which he is and is going to, and that's the reason. But he says, I think we ought to pitch in and let him go someplace else because he is only there for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to run a shadow government that is going to totally upset the new agenda. It would be great if true, but how it would happen, I'm not really sure. But actually, he really is here because his daughter wants to graduate from the school she started in, and nobody has any problems with Barron Trump doing that, even though it's costing $50 million a year or whatever to keep him there. I understand you want your kid to finish school where they're comfortable going to school, but that's okay for the white guy. The black guy we don't like so much. It's a shadow government. He goes on to say, it just doesn't make sense, and people sit back and they say to me, even though they're sitting back, my gosh, why can't you guys get this done? Meaning anything. I say, we've got a new CEO. We've got some new heads in the different departments. A few of them anyway. But the same people are there, and they don't believe that the new owners or the new managers should be running the ship. And to some extent, that's probably true. But a lot of those people are still there because you have got no idea who you want to run the ship. Nobody qualifies. Reached by the Philadelphia Inquirer, Kelly's office insisted the comments were supposed to be private. That's the answer, right? Okay, but what do you have to say about the fact that you're a wild-eyed moron? It's supposed to be happening in private, that's why. And he was merely reflecting Republicans' frustration with the deep state. Representative Kelly delivered his remarks at a private meeting to an audience of fellow Republicans. He was sharing the frustration of everyone in the room over how they believe certain Obama administration holdovers within the federal bureaucracy are attempting to upset President Trump's agenda. So apparently, offering conspiracy theories about former presidents running shadow governments is okay if it's done behind closed doors and in the company of like-minded people. Minded being the key word there. I don't think that's the case. Kelly's office then clarified to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette that he doesn't really think Obama is running a shadow government, or at least that Obama is personally operating it. Representative Kelly does not believe that President Obama is personally operating a shadow government, a spokesman said. He does believe it would be helpful to the new administration if the former president would personally call for an end to all leaks and obstruction by personnel from his administration who currently serve in the executive branch. Okay, see, all Obama needs to do to halt the conspiracy theories about him running a shadow government is denounce the leakers. It's really his fault. And until then, apparently members of Congress can be forgiven for spouting whatever strange things they want to fellow Republicans. The bottom of the piece here is illustrated by a video, by the way, of Trump meeting with cabinet members and their wives and some other people as well at another of his properties. This would be, let's see, the fifth out of, no. Is this the seventh out of 8 or the sixth out of 7 weekends that Trump has visited his Trump properties around the country. There were 4 visits to Mar-a-Lago in 6 weeks. In between, there was the visit to the restaurant at the Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C. So that was 5 out of 6 weeks that he visited one of the Trump properties. And then 6 out of 7, he went not to Mar-a-Lago this past weekend, but to the Trump National Golf Course in Virginia. It is in Sterling, Virginia, which he prefers to refer to as Potomac Falls, Virginia. There's a battle going on in the area about whether to stick with the old school name of Sterling or the more upscale name of Potomac Falls that was offered to them somehow as an option. I guess the real estate developers pushed that one. The former Lowe's Island Golf Club, which is a nice club and not that far from where I am, became the Trump National Golf Club a couple of years ago, and he decided to take his meetings over there because why use the gigantic, heavily guarded, high-tech mansion that we gave him to use when he could spend a couple $100,000 moving everybody 35 miles to the west to meet in one of his golf clubs. I wonder whether he's still thinking he can file as a real estate professional if he visits enough of his properties. He's still going to try to file as a part-time president, apparently. Not really sure what motivates all that, although there was another report over the weekend that Trump is apparently grumbling about the amount of ground he has to cover walking to meetings inside the White House. You may know we provide the President of the United States with an executive mansion that has his living quarters and his working quarters in the same building so that he doesn't have to leave. This guy keeps leaving. I don't know why we can't get this guy to sit still and do his work. And maybe there's some Adderall in his future or something. But he will not sit and do his damn work in the White House. He's got to get out and get around. And it's not to go meet people either. It's to hide from him in other glamorous, in his view, settings, places he owns. I think he doesn't like working in the White House. He doesn't like walking all over the place because he is a kind of, as we've said on Twitter, couch potatus. Apparently the reports are he spends most of his time shuffling around eating Lay's potato chips and crying about walking upstairs and having to cross hallways to get to meetings. So he moves to places he's more familiar with and he can just sit his, doughy butt down in what passes for a boardroom at a golf club and have people move in and out of there. He doesn't want to walk around. The contract on Hover-Round 1 hasn't been completed yet, and pretty soon he'll be golf carting it up and down the hallways of the White House if he can make that work. I don't think he's got the balance and coordination for a Segway, but he's going to need something to move him around there after a while because he's got such incredible stamina. All right. Well, there's no point in grumbling over the hypocrisy of it all. As you know, we've explained 100 times here on this show what gimmitarianism is really all about. And looking for logic or looking to defy Greg and shame these people is never going to work anyway. There's a reason to sign on to Greg's agenda. It's not going to work. You can't shame them. You know that you can't shame them. It doesn't mean you don't want to vent now and again, and that's fine. But the idea that you're going to logic/shame them into saying, God, you're right. You got me over a barrel. That clearly isn't going to work. So I guess if you can't get on board with Greg's agenda because it's because you think it's the most effective way of talking to these people, then at least maybe it doesn't mean we can't grouse to one another about how hypocritical they are. That's fun to some extent. It's energizing. It gets your blood flowing in the morning, perhaps. Fine. I enjoy it. You enjoy it. We'll keep doing it. But to them, it won't make any difference. That's true. All right. Speaking of that, let's embarrass and shame Donald Trump for his hypocrisy. Just with one more note. I want to put this one on the record. Ari Melber had this story. I know David Farenthold is interested in it too because it's in his wheelhouse. But Ari Melber put this up over at NBC after pledging to donate his salary. Remember that? Donald Trump, I'm not going to take the salary. I don't need it. I'm a rich guy. You can't buy me anyway. After pledging to donate his salary, Trump declines to release proof. That is to say, he says he's giving his paycheck. Either he was going to give it back to the Treasury to fight the national debt, or he would donate it to charity, which he would then, of course, deduct on his taxes. That's a little dirtier, but hey, money for charity, that's not a bad thing, just so long as it goes to a real charity, not a fake one like yours. But it turns out that he has refused to release any proof of his making those donations, either to Treasury or to any designated charity. He would have been paid twice so far. And as somebody on Twitter said, you know that if he really did make that donation, he'd be tweeting pictures of his pay stub and bragging about it. So there you go. Said he was going to give it away, and says that he probably, well, I don't know whether he said he has, but the White House has declined to offer any proof, but they're pretty sure he did the right thing anyway. The problem is they can't just simply send the money directly to those charities or even back to the Treasury, because the Constitution requires that the president receive a salary and that it not be reduced during his term. So the best you can do is you got to accept the check and then sign it over to somebody else. Has he done it? No idea. In addition to that, do we have any idea whether or not he's fulfilled his pledge to donate all profits from foreign governments' patronages of his hotels and similar businesses to the Treasury? Once again, no proof, and none in our immediate future either. Okay, so I think that just about wraps it up for the time we have set aside for today. That means it's time to hand it over to the guys at the after show to wrap it up with all the great news that we have yet to cover, but which is important nonetheless. I understand, by the way, another future Mar-a-Lago trip is planned. I understand he wants to host the president of China down there at the Mar-a-Lago Club at some point in the future, and he also has plans to meet with him at the Asia Summit. Let's see, White House, Olivia Knox says here, aiming for April 7th and 8th for the president to meet with China's Xi. That's tentative. But Tillerson will lock down an Asia trip as well. So I guess that might be April 7th and 8th might be the trip down to Mar-a-Lago. Next adventure, next great adventure, next $3.3 million jaunt. Okay, well, let's see. I think we got plenty of those stories in. We got all week to hit them on a number of things. There's important stuff, less important stuff, esoterica, peripheral actors, spies and whatnot. Mike Flynn back in the news as well. Let's see what's up for the after show. And we'll get a taste for what Wink and Justice will bring you that we had to skip in favor of more minutia about the personnel problems. It's Metaphor Monday on the after show. And what's coming up? Trump dumps due process to target all immigrants. That seems like something he might dump. Probably does a lot of dumping. But never mind that. Trump aides launch an attack against the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. You heard about that. As it readies to report on the proposed Trumpcare bill, or as I have seen it better referred to online, not just don't care, but Don T, as in Donald Trump. Don T, don't care. Don T, care. I don't know how you would say that one. It looks better in writing. And the Trump administration is attempting to halt the landmark climate change lawsuit that could thwart changes at the EPA. More, of course, coming up on the last half. We'll be talking about the report that British intelligence warns UK political parties to watch out for.
From Daily Kos Radio.
Russian sabotage.
NetworksRadio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show.
With David Waldman.
Yes, that's true. They're warning them to look out for Russian sabotage and hacking like the United States experienced. And Vladimir Putin so despises Preet Bharara, who had any idea, that the fired U.S. attorney has been banned from entering Russia since 2013. All of that coming up next on the After Show with Wink and Justice.